Hi everyone, this is our second part of our class on genetic testing. This PowerPoint was found online and I included the link on the slide, but I modified it for the purpose of this class a little bit. So in this PowerPoint you will find out why we talk about or why we do genetic testing, for what reasons, when we do that, and how we do that. Here is a couple of answers to the why question. Why do we do genetic testing? We use it as predictive testing for people who already have some known disease or condition in their family. We use it to diagnose people with symptomatic problems and who are seeking diagnosis. We use it as a surveillance for complications of a genetic condition, such as a family history of cancer. We also use molecular genetics, which is the new genetics understanding to understand our DNA. We do that for reproductive genetic screening, of which there are two main types. The first one is carrier screening for specific genetic disorders known in the family, such as sickle cell anemia or cystic fibrosis, or we use it as prenatal screening for muscular dystrophy or Down syndrome. Why do we do genetic testing? We use it to ease pain and suffering. I put a bunch of question marks behind that because as we talked in the class about language, we should not talk about suffering when we talk about disabilities. People with disabilities do not suffer, and not all of them suffer or are in pain all the time. After we do genetic testing, we make some decisions usually after we get the results. However, it is not clear who decides what to test for and what action to take. What happens is that often parents find out that a child will have some disability and they decide for abortion. Why is it common, however, that expecting mothers often feel that they have to abort a child if some disability is found? Because this is the message they get from the medical professionals. But what about if they talk to other families with similar children first? So this is what the disability community struggles with and fights against. That genetic testing mostly leads to abortion. Here is a list of some common genetic diseases and their prevalence among white people or African Americans or some Ashkenazi Jews. So you can look at this list of conditions. Also, you will be creating your own PowerPoint on genetic disability, so maybe you can pick one of those conditions such as cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, and then all kinds of diseases named by their founders, like people who found them, Tay-Sachs disease or Gaucher disease, and so on. There's many of them, and they are so rare that we don't need to spend much time talking about each of them. We will cover some in your PowerPoints. There are some traits in our genes. Traits are positive or negative. Positive traits are things that you would like to see in potential offspring, and negative traits are things that you do not like to see in potential offspring. But again, this is very individual. There was a case of a deaf lesbian couple who decided to abort a fetus when they found out that the fetus, the baby would be hearing. They both wanted a deaf child, and they just decided to abort a hearing baby. Which is, quite different from what a hearing couple would do if they found out that their child is hearing. So, here that shows that every disability it doesn't mean to suffer. Deaf people are proud of themselves and they have a quite strong culture and identity, and they just wanted a deaf baby as well. So when to test and what to do if there's a negative result. Usually if there's some genetic disability found in a fetus, carriers could be mom and dad, also grandparents are carriers. there is a pre-implantation stage when of the embryo first, then the embryo turns into a fuse, and then it turns into a newborn. So we can test in all of these stages for a genetic disability, but mostly we do that during the fetus stage. How do we test? There are non-invasive tests and invasive tests. Non-invasive tests are ultrasounds and blood tests, and invasive ones are amniocentesis, chorionic villus sampling, and pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. There is more on the last one, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. It requires in vitro or assisted reproductive technology um, to discover a genetic condition. What do we measure in a sample? We look at the number and the number of chromosomes. We look at protein and enzyme levels, and we look at DNA sequence. There's a spectrum of genetic. There's a spectrum of conditions. Here on this slide, I'm posing a question. If you wanted to find if your child is going to be a boy and a girl, would you test to find out sex of the child? Would you use information to choose the sex of a child? And would you test for a genetic disease that runs in your family? What would influence this decision? If you found out that there is someone with a genetic condition, would you decide for abortion? So here's a spectrum of kind of the severity of tests and the results, what we can do with them. Almost everyone wants to find out about the sex of their child, but not everyone wants to find out about a possible disability. And now how to use the information that we get from those tests. There is a strong argument against prenatal testing from the disabled community, and the argument goes that the lives of the disabled are not worth living. People with disabilities have been strongly arguing against genetic testing again. They say that prenatal screening expresses a hurtful message to those who live with disabilities. And also, if screening leads to a decision not to bring the disabled child into existence, then the message is that a person who has a disability is unworthy of being born, and also then unworthy of living, and that their lives must be miserable and full of suffering. Non-disabled people know very little about how living with certain conditions is. Doctors who tell them results of the test are not often able to tell them what it really means to have a child with certain disability. They don't send them to a community of people with the same condition. They mostly recommend abortion. Why is genetic testing stressful? It impacts individuals with the conditions, individuals and their families as well. It impacts women as a whole and the whole experience of pregnancy. It is stressful because it says that the worth of a person's life cannot be reduced to the cost of health services or society. There are casualties of screening, people who get caught up in the process and regret it, and also health service staffs, like female doctors, they often know very little about certain conditions. Geneticists who do have the knowledge of the condition are removed from the testing, however, because the message is carried out by clinic nurses and midwives and doctors, not by the people who actually test for the conditions. So then the information may get lost in the process of how we receive the information about the condition. You have probably heard about the Human Genome Project. It refers to the general analysis of human population through the collection of samples from very small groups in places such as Borneo and the Amazon or Alaska, and thereby we are trying to track the movement of Homo sapiens around the world from its origin, probably in Africa. Concerns were raised about the sort of consent these people are giving for their samples to be taken, and it is going to be used to bolster. Is it going to be used to bolster racism? The Human Genome Project was introduced without adequate sensitivity to the deep ethnic and political issues it has opened up. So we'll see what happens with that and how it develops and how it evolves. Genetic dissection of non-disease characteristics is the study of genetic characteristics such as IQ, personality, stature, and so on. This academic exercise ignores the social consequences of dealing with such qualities which are given high value in society and ignores the potential misapplication of the information. At the end, I included a few cartoons that are for us to encourage us to think about genetic testing more deeply. There is a man and a woman sitting, and they have this never-ending this paper that is folded, and it is titled "Map of the Human Genome," and it is just this never-ending piece of paper. And the man says, once you unfold one of these things, it's never the same. And there are some subtitles on that piece of paper that says that, for example, say ethical questions, legal tangles, privacy concerns, moral issues, medical dilemma, or insurance applications. That's all the questions and issues that the Human Genome Project may raise. And a final joke, there's a picture of God and a little angel flying around his head, and the little angel says, God, the human genome code has been unraveled. And God says, damn hackers, now I have to change the password. And one more joke for the very end is a mother and a father leaning over a crib of a newborn, and the mom says, we chose your sperm from a genius sperm bank. And the father says, and we chose your egg from a fashion model website. And the newborn is just thinking in its head, why would I want to have anything to do with you two stupid ugly people? So here might be some concerns that, all this testing and description of what people are made of can lead to some racist or exclusionary practices by some people who may feel that they are better than others. Thank you for your attention.